Hey everybody, welcome back to a Bright Idea podcast. It is season 3. I can't even believe that we are here at season 3, considering a year and a half ago, I just had this concept for this show and we did season 1 and season 2, which you guys all enjoyed. So I really do appreciate all of the views. As you could probably tell, I took a little bit of a break between season 2 and 3 just to have a summer vacation, a little bit of a sabbatical. But we're back and we're better. And I was listening to all of the feedback, like what you guys liked, what you didn't like, what you like to see in the future seasons. And one thing that I kept getting consistently was that you guys wanted to hear from me. So you wanted to know my bright idea. Well, I I was thinking about that and I was like, how do I do a solo episode that kind of dives into my journey, how I launched a bright idea, and I thought there was no better person to help me with this than my sister. So, we're introducing my sister Kayla. Say hi, Kayla.
Hey,
And she's basically going to run the show. So I'm the guest today. I'm going to take a back seat and we're just going to get started. But before we get started, I want you to know that if you are listening to this podcast on the road, maybe you're cooking, maybe you're in the car, you can like and subscribe to the podcast. It's available everywhere you listen to podcasts on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, everywhere you name it. And also, I want to mention that this is a visual component. It has a visual component as well. You can also watch this interview on YouTube. So if you are at home and you're able to turn on your TV, you can pause your podcast on your phone and watch us on YouTube. So just wanted to say that, leave a review, tell all of your friends, subscribe. And I don't know, Kayla, should we get into it?
we might as well. Let's do it. Let's do
Okay. Okay. Ah! All
it.
right.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, which I feel like if you're listening to the podcast, you might know who I am, but I'm Kayla Key, like Amber said, I'm Amber's little sister. So I'm going to interview Amber today. This is so funny because she asked me to do this 2 days ago.
Which,
And I
if
was
you know
like,
us, you know that that is definitely me and that is definitely not her.
yeah, I was, me, I'm like, let me throw something on the calendar. But you know what? Let's get it. We're getting into it. So, first things first, this is your episode. The episode is about you. So let's just start with childhood. Talk to me about your upbringing. I mean, I was there as well, but tell, tell your listeners about your childhood and your upbringing.
I don't know. I feel like it would be best to if we like kind of talked about it together, like our childhood
Yes.
together, because as
Yeah.
long as you've been alive, I've been there. And as long as I can remember, you've been there. And so you also have kind of seen me grow in this space. So I don't know, like we could just like kind of bounce off of each other. But basically, we're from Pittsburgh and growing up in Pittsburgh, it's a very I would describe Pittsburgh as like a very gritty city, right? Like a very like proud, pride, family over everything, like but also one of those places where like everyone knows each other and
Yep.
and like if you when you grow up in Pittsburgh, your parents either work at UPMC, at PNC, or they work for one of the colleges, but everywhere else is sort of like entrepreneurs. Like entrepreneurship is a big like runs the economy in Pittsburgh. Would you say?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, even if I go back home now, there's so many different like mom and pop places that you would only see in Pittsburgh. So that's like one of the things I love about Pittsburgh. Like you said, it's a very gritty, very hard nosed city, very like working class. People work their behinds off. I feel like that's where we got a lot of our strength from, like in our pride and our work that we do every day is directly, I would say, from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I would say that really was instilled in us at a very young age. Like you don't realize how much of an influence that your surroundings have when you're growing up, but I
Cool.
think just like hard work and hard like work ethic is something that was just became innate when we were growing up. Um,
Most definitely.
so I feel like one of the questions when I was coming, like preparing for this interview and like sending you questions, one of the questions that I always ask like people when I'm interviewing them is like, how would your family describe you?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is
So, yeah. So rather than me like speak on my own behalf, I feel like that I should direct the question to you.
well, part of me feels like I am interested. I wonder. I want to turn that on to you. Like, how do you think we describe you to other people?
I feel like because I'm the oldest daughter, I feel like my usually the personality that you guys would just what you guys would say about me is probably that I'm really hardworking, I'm super ambitious. I would say like at times very intense. But like when I like am driven by something, like there's no stopping me.
Yeah. No, I would agree. That is definitely how we would describe you. I mean, once you have your mind on something, it's pretty much on and popping. But once you do not have your mind on it, it's almost like out of sight, out of mind, which I've always admired as your younger sister, like your ability to just be like, well, it no longer serves me.
Oh
We're
my god.
done. But
The
that's
yeah.
that, and also like, and Amber's heard me say this a million times, but for the viewers and the listeners, I always describe Amber, and I believe Emmanuel would say the same. In case you guys don't know, we have a younger brother, Emmanuel. But I would say Amber's the captain of the ship. Like she, we've followed her for 20 plus years, so it's kind of like, listen, she's leading us into battle, this battle that is life. So yeah,
Yeah.
Amber's the captain of the key ship.
That's so funny though because that you mentioned that because I always forget that about myself. Like some in my own head, I feel like um like if I'm not interested in something, like I'm trying really hard to be like there and engaged, but like if I don't if if it doesn't serve
So
me, you're absolutely right. I'm like
yeah,
anyway.
she's not gonna fake the funk. Like if she's not into it, it's pretty much clipped. Like move on. Move on.
That
So
is so
with
funny.
that, speaking of moving on, talking about entrepreneurship. Okay, so your podcast is about entrepreneurs and their aha moments, their bright idea
Yeah.
moments, and what sparked those moments. So talk about entrepreneurship in your own life, in your childhood, growing up as an entrepreneur. What sparked that? Where did that come from?
I think that growing up, like we always, like I said, like being in Pittsburgh, we were surrounded by people that had their own businesses. So like I always saw, like we would go to local restaurants that weren't chains, that we saw like really hard working people
Yeah.
working day in and day out to serve the community. One of them, as an example, was Miss Jean's Soul Food. It was like the soul food place that our family would go to growing up that like
Yeah.
all the food was phenomenal, but it took like 4 hours to make. But like
Listen, no hate on Miss Jean, but I don't know what she was doing in the back. It literally took like 4 hours to
it
get.
literally took 4 hours, but in addition to that, she would come out and she would sit with us, like at the table. Like I just can remember being like 8 years old, and she would be out there talking to us, and you just saw the impact that she was having, not only on her business, but on the community. And also, I really loved that, like, she had control of her own destiny. Like it was her business. She wasn't answering to a boss or anything. And so I feel like growing up too, like we also had family members that had their own businesses. I can remember going back to Jersey, like where our mom is from, and like Aunt Sarah would be selling baskets, or like Uncle Chucky would be selling like fried fish, or like
Mhm.
Uncle Charles had his own businesses too. So I don't know, but I also so we grew up in a really artsy household.
Yes, very much so.
And I feel like when you're an artist, a lot of times people don't think about art as like a form of entrepreneurship, but it really is. And I remember, like, for the people listening, our parents are like people that are like, if someone gives something to you, you say thank you. And so we always had to write thank you cards to every single person that we ever encountered, or like anyone that like yeah,
Literally.
if we didn't say thank you, like seriously, if it wasn't a phone call or a card, we were in trouble, were we not?
Yeah, very much so. We would get a reminder a week later, like, did you write them a letter? We'd be like,
Yeah. And
sorry.
so exactly. And so I don't know, like after a while I was like, "Oh, greeting cards."
Yeah, so that was your first business as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur? Was that your okay, so greeting cards. Can you share the name with the viewers?
I would say oh, the name was called Birdhouse Greeting Cards.
Yes. And that also, just to jump in to interject, Amber, I still have some of Amber's greeting cards. And again, like Amber said at the beginning, this is also, it's not just a podcast, but it's a visual medium. So if you can jump on YouTube to see this, I would encourage you to do so. But I have some of Amber's cards. Here's some of
That's so funny.
her greeting cards. They just keep coming. And we just talked about thank you cards. Here's a thank you card. So yeah, your first business was a greeting cards business. Why greeting card? I mean, you talked about greeting cards, but why did you? How was this like the aha that you were like, this is going to be it, and this is going to be something really cool to do?
I think for several reasons. Well, for one, like we growing up went to an art school, so we were constantly just immersed in that community.
Mm-hmm.
And greeting cards are something special where it's like you can create a design and then get them reprinted over and over and over again. So when I was thinking about a business, I was thinking more so instead of like a service, and I don't know how I was thinking about this when I was like 13, but I was like, instead of like a service where you have to continuously serve people and that it just like seemed like so much work. Like greeting cards didn't seem as so much work because you make the design, you print it a million times, and then you just consistently sell it. So it
Right.
just seemed like at the time the best way to start a business.
Like
Business.
it's like a little bit more passive, if you will. Like you create that design, and then like you said, you just manufacture that bad boy and get it going, which is really cool. But it's crazy because if I think about it now, you've always had this entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, what kid hasn't had, like, for instance, a lemonade stand? Like
Yeah.
we did lemonade stand right outside of our house, and we can throw in a photo later and post if we want. But the lemonade stand, and Amber's out there making sure we're selling. Like Amber, talk to the viewers about your role in the lemonade stand growing up.
Okay, so every time there was like a fundraiser or like anything, like we were out there participating. And so one summer, our mom was like, we grew up on a street full of kids, and our mom was always trying to like get us to be active like outside. And so one day she was like, let's have a lemonade stand, and whatever money that you guys make, I'll throw you a pizza party. So she set out this, and we have a picture to show you, but she set out like a table and she made us a sign on like, y'all remember like word art from like Microsoft, where like our mom was like a whiz at word art.
Yes, big
She
time.
was so good at word art. So she made us a sign, and people would come down the street. We grew up in a neighborhood that was like right in the park, so it got a lot of traffic. And like every single car that came down that street, I was like, get him, get her, get her. Like we were selling, and we sold for like a quarter, right? Like it was a
Yes.
quarter for
20, yeah, 25 cents.
well, anyway, we got two pizzas that day because we did not leave any stone unturned. So I think like that also goes back to my personality of like just determined.
I said it before. Amber is the captain. So we saw a truck or whoever rolling down that hill. It was like, jump out, selling lemonade. So yeah, I mean, you've always had that entrepreneurial mindset and that business mindset. But I think we should take a quick break because we're going to talk about business and storytelling right after this break.
All right, guys, can I get a little personal with you real quick? A few months ago, I turned 30 years old. The big 3-0. My whole life, I've loved birthdays. I love big parties and new memories with friends and family and opportunities. I never really thought about the number or what the next year could look like until this year, when something about turning 30 stopped me in my tracks, and I decided it was time to get a little serious. I started to reevaluate a lot of things in my life: what I wanted to do with my time, what I wanted to achieve in my personal life, what kind of woman I wanted to become. And I thought to myself, one of the first things I need to do is get my money right. Gratefully, I grew up in a household where we had conversations about money around the dinner table. Discussions about the stock market, debt, 401k, financial independence. No topic was off limits. I thought I was in a good place managing my own money until I started planning my future, and I had no clue where to begin. This made me turn to a financial advisor. Working with a financial advisor has been an enlightening journey that has brought me incredible value in more ways than I initially anticipated. Having a dedicated advisor taught me a discipline around finances that I hadn't experienced before, challenging me to prioritize my goals and align my spending with what truly matters. I've also come to better appreciate the worth of my time, realizing that how I spend both my time and my money directly impacts my long-term success. One of the most empowering aspects of working with a financial advisor has been learning strategies and techniques to make my money work for me. These are concepts that we just don't learn in school. From tax optimization to investment strategies and retirement planning, I've gained insights that I could have never developed on my own. Having someone guide me through complex financial decisions has been far more beneficial than trying to handle everything myself. With a financial advisor's expertise, I've been able to approach financial independence with clarity and confidence, knowing that I have a trusted partner who understands my aspirations and can help me make informed choices. Chosen Advisory Group caters to the ambitious, the established mid-career professionals, and those on the cusp of retirement who recognize the dedication required to attain financial independence. With their experience and clear professional guidance, you can transform your financial goals into a reality. Life is stressful. Money should not be. Begin your journey to financial clarity. You can schedule your complimentary consultation at www.chosenadvisorygroup.com today.
Okay, so welcome back. Welcome back to the show, Bright Ideas. So, we're talking about business and storytelling. You went to school for journalism, went to Westchester University. Talk to the viewers about choosing to go to school and study journalism.
So, to be quite honest, when I was applying for colleges, I didn't know what I wanted to study. I didn't even know. I don't think there was a term called storyteller back in the day. Like
Yeah, I don't think so.
storyteller is like a new word. And so I remember like being in high school, and I think I mentioned this like in our last break, but our last segment, but we went to art school. So I thought I didn't know what a path into art was going to be for me, or like a path for like continuing this greeting cards business, but I knew that art would somehow play a role. And one of the things that stood out to me was it's so funny like that this is a thing, but or that I even thought of it as a thing, but I thought like being an art therapist would be like cool.
Yeah. Well, I think it's cool.
I thought it was going to be so cool, and I don't know how I even like found out what an art therapist was. I just know that like when I made art, or when we made art, like the feeling that you would have after completing something was like therapy. So anyway, fast forward, I tell that story to say that I went to Westchester for cross country. I was recruited for cross country and track. And when I got there, I was like, it was accepted students day, and you could like talk to professors and administration that was there. And I remember going up and asking them, like, do you guys have art therapy as a major? And the lady was like, we have psychology, but we don't have like art therapy as a major. And so 18-year-old me was like, okay, well, I guess I'm still going to this school because I'm running cross country, but I need to find another avenue. And so I always knew that like I enjoyed telling stories. I enjoyed like writing, and at the time like being on camera. And so I was like, okay, I guess we'll go to school for broadcast journalism, whatever that was.
I guess.
But actually, and let me rewind. Westchester didn't have a program. I went to school for communication studies, and I always tell people, I'm like, I went to school for communications with an emphasis in journalism. No, I created a major for myself.
Yeah, Amber literally. This is the truth. Like they did not have this program when she arrived in 2012. AK, yeah,
Yeah,
2012.
2012.
They did not have this major, so she literally created it. She created a lot of things. I mean, Amber is a bit of a trailblazer at Westchester University. She'll never say it because even though she's a prideful person and she's confident, she's not gonna say that. But she's very much so a trailblazer at Westchester University. But I mean, you were an executive producer for the sports show. I mean, you not only did you create this major in this program, but you also created, as it relates to storytelling, you created this like student run
Hmm.
newscast,
Yeah.
with some of your classmates. But it was just like, that's nuts. That's
Yeah. I remember because Westchester didn't have a program that we had a TV club. And so hold on. Oh, Basil, stop. Basil. You're
I
like
was waiting for my nephew to join in the show.
he's like about to throw the ring light's about to fall. Anyway, sorry about that interruption. But so Westchester had a TV club, and the TV club had all of these different shows. And one of the shows was a sports show. And as I said previously, I ran cross country and track for Westchester. I ended up only running for 2 years because I wanted to really pursue my major, but there was this opportunity to rebrand this sports show. And I remember talking to one of my friends, shout out to Ashley, and we were like, what if we called it Ram Center? What if we like made this sports show that didn't just talk about like Westchester football beat Shippensburg 20-15 this week, and like these were the play-by-plays. Like, what if we could dive deeper into who our athletes are as people? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember we talked about like injuries, we talked about mental health, we talked about um like getting to know the players a little bit, and it was just this opportunity to bring a bring like first of all, bring more programs into Westchester and also give other students an opportunity to figure out if broadcasting was what they wanted to go into. And now today, it's just really cool to see, like, looking back, that this like tiny little show that me and my friends put together on campus, like people that were on that show are now in the industry in top
Oh
10
yeah,
markets, like, and doing
yeah.
really, really well.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so, being an executive producer of that show, you wear a lot of hats, but also one of the hats that I wore was that was the time where YouTube was becoming really big. And so our show was on all of the campus TVs, but it was also on YouTube. And so I became like absolutely obsessed with our numbers, like how many views we were getting for each
Right.
episode, who was commenting, and this idea to like include local businesses and like giveaways
Mm-hmm.
was a way that we could like advertise in a way to help grow our numbers.
You're thinking of all of these different things as you're executive producing. You're telling stories, and not just football stories, not just basketball, but you're telling the stories from like other sports that are like lesser known. Like you guys had a
Yeah.
gymnastics team, you were on the
Golf.
cross country team, you have a golf team, so you guys are telling stories from across all sports. But then you're thinking, because this is that entrepreneurial mindset, the business mindset, how can we get more eyeballs? How can we get this revenue up? How can we highlight local businesses? I mean, that is like, I feel like that's next level thinking,
Hmm.
just all encompassing thinking. And with that, we might have to fast forward a little bit, because you went and took your storytelling and your business mindset, and after you graduated, you went into media sales.
Yeah.
Media sales. Talk what? Talk to us about that.
I know. It's quite a turn. I think initially when I was like 22 years old and I had been known as like the reporter, executive producer, all of the things, when
Mhm.
people heard that I was going into media sales, first of all, it's like because we work in the industry, we know what media sales is. But to the outside world, no one knows what that is. But essentially, it's the business side of the industry. Like without advertising, our state we would not have jobs. And
Correct.
so I understood the power of that business side of the industry. And so that was what led into media sales. I also think that like at that time, the industry was changing so rapidly in terms of like content, how we view content. Also,
Yeah.
we're Black women. If you're watching this, we have curly hair. Like, there was a time before we entered the industry where we had to look a certain way. And the people that are on TV, like the people you see on camera, they don't make those decisions. The people on the business side make those decisions. And so I knew at that time that like my destiny in this industry was going to be bigger than talking on a mic. Like I
That,
really wanted to like change something. So I decided to go into media sales.
which is, I mean, it's again, I keep like talking about, it's just like kind of next level thinking, like almost like playing chess, if you will, but with your own career. Because like you said, Ram Center was on every TV. I mean, you had a internship at Fox 29 in
Yeah.
Philly where you're doing junior reporting. So you were very much so, I mean, we're also talking about, for the viewers, this is 2016 now, and between 2012 2016, you have a lot going on in this country, so you're on the ground, you're reporting on what's happening, if everyone can think back to 2016. And
Yeah.
then, but it wasn't just the entrepreneurial and business mindset that you had, and that you wanted to change the decisions that we could make if you wanted to be on camera. Talk to us about, you went through a program, right? A media
Yeah.
sales program that kind of almost gave you like the lay of the land to then jump into this industry. What was that?
Yeah, so I went through. So the National Association of Broadcasters has an education foundation called the NAB, or no, it's called the Media Sales Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a 2 week boot camp at Howard University where they recruited minorities to learn about the industry, learn about the media sales industry. So, not just about broadcast TV, but we learned about how to sell cable, how to sell radio, how to sell digital, how to sell outdoor advertising, which is billboard ads. And from there, we did a lot of cold calling. We did a lot of like, we put together a presentation. We learned about what is a rating versus what is a share versus like, why advertisers are so important to the landscape in general to keep the lights on. And so I was very fortunate that after part of the program was the very last day, we had like this speed, like almost like speed dating in a way. It was like this speed, like lightning interview round where I had to interview like 20 like companies that day, just across the country. And then with the idea that when you finished with these interviews, you would have a job. And
Oh,
so, yeah, so as soon as yeah, because I have to say, backing up is like, I did want to be a reporter, but when I was in college in my senior year, I was putting together my reel and I was sending them out to stations and I wasn't getting anything. And I just knew
okay.
I didn't want to move back to Pittsburgh. Nothing, no shade to Pittsburgh, but I was like, I was ready to like be out in the world and like have a job.
You're like,
Yeah.
let's
I
go.
I was ready. So when I was in this program and they told us on the first day that when we at the very last day, like we're fighting for jobs, I was like, let's go. Like
This is what I'm trying to tell the viewers. Like, this is Amber. This is like, if this is the goal, get out the way.
yeah, no,
Out the-
seriously, like bulldozed.
You
Like
have to
I
go nuts.
I remember in those 2 weeks, like, so our mom has had many jobs, but mostly in sales, like our entire life,
Mhm.
like worked for many organizations, but always in the sales side. And she actually worked for a TV station growing up. And so I remember reaching out to her while I was in this program and I was like, do you still talk to so and so? Do you still talk to this person, this person? Can I call them and ask them what it's like to work in this job? Because, and like, also, can you send me a book on media sales? And I remember she overnighted this textbook that was like
Oh man, to Howard
out
University.
to Howard University that was like thousands of pages big, and also like most of it was irrelevant because this was like 2016 and this book was like from before the recession in
Oh,
2008. So like some of it wasn't relevant to today, but the nuts and bolts were there. And I remember just like editing the crap out of this book because I was like, I need a job though.
yeah, I have to do that. So shout out to mom for being like, oh, not
Literally.
a problem. We go to the local Borders bookstore.
Literally. Mom is like, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, literally. But
So, yeah. So then from there, I moved to Richmond, and that was like where I got my first media sales job.
I love that. Well, I should say, before we get into media sales, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to talk about the challenges and the impact of those challenges. All right, guys, we're back. So we're talking about media sales. We left off with Amber moving down to Richmond. Also, we didn't say, but you did secure this job at the end of that 2 week excursion. You secured this
Yes.
job. You moved down to Richmond, Virginia. And so let's talk about, going into the job. What were some of the things that you felt like these are the things I'm good at, and these are the things like, oh man, I'm gonna have to work on this.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm good at is that I'm naturally a talker. Dad always says I have the gift of gab.
Okay.
And so, and so I feel like generally I could connect with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I will say though that being from the north, like, and also growing up in our household where everyone is very direct, I noticed very quickly when I moved to Richmond that Richmond is considered, even though it's not like super south, it's a southern city.
Sure.
So I would like go in and I'd be like straight to business, and people in Richmond are very like southern hospitality. Like they are like, how's your mom, how's your dad, like, hey, I saw that you like got a new puppy last week. Like they want you to
Yeah.
like
There's a
ease
lot of
into it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was literally like, are you going to buy this or no? And like that I learned very quickly when I started working in Richmond that that is not how you do business. But
Mhm.
I think one of the things that I was really good at was just I mean, with sales and with business, it's a game. Like the more you call on people, the more touch points you make, the better result you're going to get. So like my job required a lot of cold calling. And so if I called 10 people in the day to try to make an appointment, I was only going to get one of them. But I like would play a game with myself where I'd be like, okay, I'm going to call 20 people and I might get two appointments, or I might make two closes today. And so I think I was really good at that. I think the challenges though was like working in broadcast specifically, the industry was changing so much. Like people weren't believing in the power of local broadcast anymore. And as someone who was 22 years old in
Mhm.
2016, I didn't know if I believed in the power of local broadcast either.
Mm.
So
Okay.
having to like with all of the competition that was out there, like businesses were now advertising on social media. They were kind of leaving local TV behind, having to believe in my own product and position it in a way that we could still help a business grow.
That was the challenge.
That was the challenge. Yeah.
What? Okay, so with that, because that's a very real challenge, and I would arguably say a lot of news across the nation, across everywhere, they were experiencing the same challenges. How did you go about, facing and overcoming those challenges with your background in storytelling, with your newfound expertise, you could say, in media sales? How how are you like, okay, this is an obstacle, but we're going to go through it?
Yeah, I feel like for anyone that's listening that works in marketing, or even you don't even have to work in marketing, but like runs any sort of business, you know that there's like a pyramid. There's like a an advertising funnel where like the top is like consideration. I'm messing up the order, but y'all will understand. It's like first you have to be aware of something in the first place to even know that it exists, and then you go into like consideration, after seeing that ad or seeing that this business exists like 3 or 4 times. And then moving from that, you're like, okay, is this something that I need? And then the bottom is making a decision and going through with it. And so I would always like, I would go into businesses with that same funnel in mind, and I would use storytelling to try to persuade the business that like this is how it works. Like when you watch TV, you're saying you don't watch TV, but everyone watches TV. So you might see the same lawyer 3 or 4 times, and you don't need a lawyer at that time, but then you get in an accident and you need a public or a personal injury lawyer, you know that XYZ is a personal injury lawyer, and then you took that consideration and then you just moved down the funnel and now you're using the lawyer. And that's the same, that's how it works. And so once I like got that part and I was able to communicate that part and get them to understand that part through storytelling, that's how I overcame it.
What would you say in your career in media sales? Because you worked in media sales for
6 years. Yeah.
6 years, and eventually we'll get up to the DMV, to DC in the area. But what would you say out of your 6 years of media sales? What was like a project that you worked on that you're the most proud of? Like that it really came out the way you envisioned, and it ended up making good money for the company and all the things. What is something you're like, oh, that was really really cool?
There were several. Well, the first fun one was a commercial that we did with Biz Markie for this, like before he died, R.I.P. I think I still have. Actually, I do have that commercial. I still have that commercial. We'll put that in the episode.
Yeah, throw that in there.
Yeah, but it was like this mom and pop, this really small black hair salon this woman owned in like a more rural area in Richmond, like outside of the city. And she used to be, in her previous life, she was like a makeup artist, like hair stylist for celebrities, and Biz Markie was one of her clients. And she wanted people to find out about her. So she was like, I'm going to hit up Biz Markie and see if he'll fly to Richmond to do this commercial with us. And we were like, is she really going to do that? And 100% Biz Markie was in this commercial, which you'll see right here.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Biz Markie. When I'm in RVA, I watch CW Richmond like this.
So shout out to him and rest in peace. But I would say that like using your resources was definitely something that did well for the company. And then another thing that we did was another like proud, successful moment that I had was like, I was always really good at thinking outside of the box, like thinking bigger than like just a 15 or a 30-second commercial, but being able to like come up with some, I can't even like think of an example right now, but like come up with like a different way, like whether it was like a giveaway of some sort or whether it was like, some sort of incentive to get people to tune in rather than just like your 15-second message. So
yeah, that's awesome. I think one of my favorite ones that you did, I can't remember exactly what it was even about. I think it was about weather. I don't remember, but remember, and you were in it. It was a commercial, and you guys were like running through, was it Richmond? And there was weather. Like something was happening, like the ground was cracking. I don't know what it was, but I thought it was so cool because it's something you have to talk, I think, a little bit about what all, of course, we don't have to go through the whole thing about what goes into media sales and doing these commercials. But not only were you out there, you're cold calling, you're meeting up with clients, but you also have an opportunity to be the creative director, if you will, for commercials. Like when you finally nail this deal and you're like, okay, the local plumbers, whatever, wants a commercial, you go through this whole storyboarding process of putting a commercial together. And in this particular one I'm talking about, you're in the commercial.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Okay, talk to the viewers about that. They might not know what I'm talking about.
So when you're an account executive, which is what I was, your job is to basically be a consultant. You're going in there and trying to find the client's needs analysis, putting together a plan that's going to drive customers, traffic, and then in turn drive revenue. But from there, after you close the deal, you then turn into a creative director because you have to put together their commercial and their message that's going to be delivered to their audience. And so with that, I would work with our creative services people to come up with like a concept. So come up with a concept that's going to be different than the other concepts that are competing, and then coming up with the shoot and when we were going to shoot the concept and when it's going to air and all of the things. And so a lot of times it would be like me writing a script, me like finding an actor, getting it tracked, and then being there on scene when we're out shooting. And so that was like, I was really good at the business side, but the creative side was when I like would just go off. Like I was like, this is it. Like this is the fun part.
Yeah, no, I think that's super cool. I think hearing about all of your stories and just the cool things that you did in media sales, that it's so fun to hear. And you spent, like we said, 6 years in that industry. Like that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So then from Richmond, you went up to DC and you still worked in media sales for a local news station. Mm-hmm. But then you got to a point where you kind of shifted gears a little bit. You stayed within journalism and the media, but you shifted gears. What was that shift? If you can tell the audience.
Yeah, so I was starting to be honest, I was feeling a little fatigued when I moved to DC to work in media sales, because what was really cool about working in Richmond, it's a smaller market. So you're able to wear more hats and you're able to work with clients directly. Like the majority of my book of business were mom and pop shops. So I had direct access and influence over their decisions that were going to be best for their business. And then when I moved to DC, I was working for DC is a top 10 market, and a lot of the businesses that I was working with had agencies. So it took the creativity out of it and it just became transactional. And so when I was really thinking about where I saw my career going, I really loved the creativity of it all. And missed that. And so I was like, let me go back to my roots. Who am I? And I was like, okay, went to school with an emphasis in journalism, really loved this creative idea, really love the business side, and still thinking of like how we could, I don't know. I didn't even think I don't think at the time I knew that I was like, that it was marketing or content marketing that I was really aiming for. So I decided, I was like, I think I'm going to go back to school. And so I ended up going to get my master's in journalism and digital storytelling. And the reason that I'm emphasizing journalism and digital storytelling is because it wasn't just a journalism degree where like we're writing and learning how to report. It was digital storytelling that like in our current landscape of the industry, how we can create, monetize, innovate, like how we can be on the forefront when in an ever-changing industry. And so that's what I decided to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy because also people should know at the time when Amber moved up to DC, we lived together.
Yes.
Which I have to say to the viewers, all right? I don't know what y'all's relationships are like with your siblings. We're not going to get into that. But living with my sister, oh my gosh, this was amazing. Because I feel like, for one thing, when we were living together, you moved to DC in September-ish of 2019.
Yeah.
That spring is when COVID hit. Like, boom.
Yeah. Winter, actually.
That winter into like February, March. So we're just locked down. We're locked down. We're living together in an apartment with her and her 2 cats. And I was just like, man, we're in it. Like, we're in it. I feel like we had so much fun. Like, it was, I want to make very clear that was a crazy time. Yeah. Just absolutely nuts what was going on across the world. But living with my sister during this time, and also, I think it was during this time you were still working in media sales.
Yes.
And then it was like that fall of 2020, I believe. That's when you switched. And it was also really crazy. I want to point out to the viewers too that not only were we living together, but we also worked at the same station.
We did. We couldn't get enough of each other. We literally did. But I'm so glad that you brought that up because I want to like, it wasn't, this journey isn't just all about like work. Like
Right,
there were things going on in the world and between us and our family that really like cultivated this idea that we'll get to, which is a bright idea. But like when we were living together in DC, we like she said, like we were on lockdown. Like we were trying to find a way to get up every morning. And so one of those ways was like, because we were both journalists, we had all of this equipment in our apartment. And we tell stories for a living. We tell stories to each other. Like we just like laugh and we goof off and like we don't really take, I mean, we have pretty serious professions, but we're like not very serious people.
Yeah. We don't take ourselves seriously.
Yeah, we don't. And so we like created podcasts. We would just sit and
Really?
like, yeah, we literally would.
It was nuts. Like, for you guys to understand this, because you were all there, we all experienced the pandemic together. We couldn't go out and see our friends. We couldn't go out and, I mean, people used to like go out to the National Mall here in DC and they'd be sitting like miles apart. It was just crazy. So
Yeah.
it was literally one night where Amber and I were like, we haven't seen our friends. We want to talk to our friends. We just want to catch up. Let's just start talking to them, start a podcast. It's just us two talking to them. And it was literally called The Roommate Agreement.
The roommate agreement.
The roommate
Yeah.
agreement. We'll throw up maybe like a little flash of like something up there. But like it was just, for me, it was just, we used it as an opportunity to connect with our friends when we could not physically connect with them.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Kayla.
And it's Amber, and this is the roommate agreement.
What is a roommate agreement?
A roommate agreement is a legally binding contract put in place that both you and your roommate agree upon and sign before living together. The roommate agreement is made between the tenants and has nothing to do with the landlord.
As roommates, we have good times
Every day with some of the kids in our
Out of the box!
and we have bad times.
Making my way downtown, walking fast, chasing paths, and I'm homebound. Is it chasing paths or chasing cats?
It's chasing cats.
Really bad times. But it's always an adventure when we're together.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and let's get into the roommate agreement.
How does it work out when one person wants to have company or guests for an extended period? Is there like an agreement?
No, I think that we're pretty much on the same page. We both be ready for people to get the fuck out at the same time.
Oh my God.
Hey guys, a new episode of The Roommate Agreement is available today on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Check it out.
And so, like Amber said, we had all of this equipment. We were professional storytellers and journalists. So like, it just made perfect sense of what we were doing. And I watched Amber go through this process of transitioning out of media sales and into becoming a marketing producer and producing some really, really cool stuff. I mean, that would be a whole other conversation to talk about all the things that she did for, the local CBS station here. But I mean, I watched this with my very eyes, and it was just this determination that I think is very admirable, if I'm being honest, because there are a lot of people that were in that situation in 2020 that were like, man, I don't know what to do, and felt stuck. We all felt stuck. We physically couldn't go anywhere. But Amber was like, I mean, I might be stuck, but when I get out of here, I'm not going to be stuck, which I think is really cool. And I think it just touches back on what you've always had. You've always had this drive and this pride. Like, if it's a competition, like, I'm winning this thing. It's
Win, place, or show.
Exactly. So but also Amber, talk about, I know you had this, like, this burnout, if you will, in media sales, and you had this itch to tell a story, but talk about, I mean, 2020 was crazy. And so when you were deciding to go back to school, there was a lot that was happening in the news in 2020. And why did you feel like it was at that point you were like, I'm going to go back to school for journalism and digital media? Why? What was going on at that particular time in 2020?
So 2020 was a crazy time for everybody, and for very obvious reasons. We were having a lot of civil unrest. I mean, there was a man that was literally murdered and we
In front of our
saw
eyes.
in front of our eyes, and we work in news stations where they were showing the footage over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and we were still expected to wake up every day and do our jobs.
Right.
And I just remember being like, it was like that, and then it was also this awakening of like the world was having this like aha moment, if you will, of like, how do we, like, it was like guilt that was happening. And so all of these people were like all of a sudden pouring all of their money and their resources into things that they weren't pouring their money and their resources into before. And one of them being businesses, specifically Black owned businesses. And this entire episode we started this episode with the fact that growing up in Pittsburgh, like it was in our souls that we were like it was in our upbringing that we grew up with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and we saw Black entrepreneurs our whole lives.
Everywhere. Yeah.
And so what I was seeing in all of the articles that I was reading was that venture capitals and white people and all of these people were all of a sudden supporting Black businesses. And the story that I kept seeing was like, we're seeing this resurgence of Black owned businesses. We're seeing like there's new Black owned businesses, like more Black people are starting businesses. And it was this narrative that like all of a sudden Black people were getting into business. And that wasn't it.
It's not true.
That wasn't it. Like on one hand, I was really grateful that people were pouring their hard earned money into Black businesses to help grow. But Black businesses aren't new. The reason that we don't see as many Black and brown businesses is because there are systemic barriers to funding and access and bank loans and all of the things. And so in my research, I was reading books on like the circulation of the Black dollar. I was doing research on like
Black
Wall Street and the Green Book and all of these like resources and time periods that they wanted us to forget. And I just had this moment where I was like, the reason that Black businesses aren't succeeding isn't because they're just not succeeding, like people are just giving up.
It's not because they're rookies in this business game. They've been around. That's not the issue.
It's the barriers to access. It's the barriers to capital. And it's the barrier to knowledge. There was a huge knowledge gap. Like you can think of any situation in your own life. Like if you don't know, you don't know.
Correct.
And that was the reason that Black businesses and brown businesses were failing. And so I wanted to create this space through storytelling where we could help each other out through access to information and closing that knowledge gap.
Yeah, exactly. And you took that information, you took what was going on in the world, and right in our back door. I mean, we live in Washington, D.C., so there's plenty that happens in D.C., and you took that and you went to grad school, and you went to grad school also during the pandemic, which I think a lot of people can say they had the same experience, unfortunately. But you took that, and then we have to get to a point where we're talking about your bright idea, because it's sitting behind you. It's like it's right there, and we're gonna get into that. But we're going to get into that right after this break. All right, everybody, we're back. And before we left, we talked about A Bright Idea, which is why we're all here today. Season 3 of A Bright Idea, which is like, it's mind-blowing. This is insane. So let's talk about it, AK. So let's talk about A Bright Idea. How did you come up with this idea? Why this podcast? Give us the lowdown.
So I came up with the idea, like I said, I just wanted to create a space for Black and brown businesses, and for the people that watch this and listen to this podcast, not every guest that I have on this show is Black or brown. And that is sort of the point, is that I want to close the knowledge gap. I think that we can learn from everybody, but the real emphasis is on Black and brown businesses. Just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. But so I wanted to create this space to close the knowledge gap. And I was sitting here thinking about, like, I knew it was going to be a podcast form because that's what we had been doing in our apartment for the last 3 years in lockdown. So I knew that was going to be what it was. Also, podcasting was just surging because podcasting was becoming really popular, but podcasting is also much easier than to have like a web show, right? So I knew that that was going to be what it was. And then I remember the hardest part, honestly, was coming up with the name.
Really?
Yeah, it was the name. And I don't know if you and Emmanuel remember this, but I remember, so for those who are listening, in our family, we have a million inside jokes. Like, that's literally like what this family is. And so we have this saying where we, like, if you say something smart or if you do something good in the family, we go, kiss your brain. Kiss your brain. And so I don't know why I thought that would be like a good podcasting name.
Wait,
like
that was the first name.
That was the first name, was like kiss your brain. Because I thought, like, I don't know, like guests would come on and they would say like something, they came up with this like really great idea for a business, and it's like kiss your brain. So I remember I sent this to you. I sent it to you and Emmanuel in our like sibling group chat. And you guys were both like, I think Emmanuel was like, that ain't it. And then I think you were like, I think we can do better. Like, I was like, we can do better here. And I was like, wow, like reason 1562 that my siblings keep me humble, because you guys were not feeling it.
Listen, if we're not feeling it, no one is going to feel it. So I do remember this now that you're bringing it up. Yeah, I remember that.
I like tried to find the text message where I like said that, and I couldn't, and it made me really mad because I save all of our like funny messages. But yeah, you and Emmanuel were not feeling it at all.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. No, we weren't feeling it. However, I'm glad that we went back to the drawing board. We got back in the lab.
We did. We got back in the stew on that one.
Came up with another name. Okay, so you came up with a bright idea, but you call it a bright idea podcast, but you also ask your guests what this aha moment was. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about an aha moment, like, well, I visualize a light bulb. Is that what you were thinking as well? Like, what was the thought process behind the aha moment?
Yeah, it's sort of like that light bulb moment, moment, honestly, for me, when I have an aha moment, it like takes over my whole body. Like, I could be sitting there and all of a sudden I'm like Raven in the future. Like, my eyes just, I'm like like.
For the viewers, what she's saying right now is 100% the truth. I've seen this with my own eyeballs. I'll be like, Amber, what's going on?
No, I literally go into a trance, and then like from there, I usually, this is like my like order of events. I will like find the closest like journal. Then I'm like writing out this plan, and then I'm telling everybody. Yes. And it's funny because usually people's counsel is like, don't tell people your big ideas. I've never been that type of person. Like, if I have an idea or if I'm going to do something, I talk about it ad nauseum. Like, I literally will talk about it until I'm blue in the face, because one, it holds me accountable, but two, it like, I'm a verbal processor, so I have to like get it. I have to like workshop it out. Yeah. So that's how it came to be.
Yeah. And for Amber, like, even like, and we've been talking about, you know, with your personality and our childhood growing up, like you said, most people would think like, okay, I got to keep this inside, you know, or else someone's going to steal it. But Amber's such a person that's like, well, no one can do it like me. So like, who cares if I told my neighbor down the street, and when I took Basil to the vet, if the vet knows, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, I'm going to do it. So I think that's the coolest thing about it. And I feel like that's a great mindset to have, just as a business owner, but I also feel like just as a person in general. Yeah. Like, no one is going to live your life like you.
Yeah,
So
you just
I
gotta
think
do
that's
it.
cool. And like we're saying, this is season 3. Like this is season 3. So talk to the viewers and talk to me a little bit about what you've learned, because while you've been a host, you've been a reporter, you've been in front of the camera, talk about this space and what you've learned over the past 2 seasons going into your 3rd season.
I think I learn right along with the listeners. I like want to be very clear. I don't have this show because I'm an expert in any topic. I think I'm a person that just is fascinated with business, and I'm fascinated with entrepreneurship. I understand how important entrepreneurship is to our economy. Like 99% of small business, 99% of businesses in the United States are small businesses, and that's according to Forbes.com. Like,
That's a crazy percentage.
yeah, like, like it's a wild percentage. And so I think I'm just somebody that always had an interest, but I'm no expert. So I think what I've learned is so many things. Like every time I have somebody on the show, I feel like a personal connection to them, and I walk away being able to use something that they told me in my own personal life. So in season 3, like it's just that, like you can expect to see like people who are working in the mental health field. I have somebody on that is teaching businesses how to build business credit. Like I thought you just go out and get an LLC, like, and you use your personal credit to like get loans. Like, no, there's a whole other way that businesses have to operate their finances that I had no idea about. And you'll hear that in the episode. Like, I'm like, wait, I didn't know that. You'll hear that. And like, there's guests that work in the women's health space. There's groomers that I have on. I have artists. Like I really, and that's the feedback that I get all the time is like, wow, you have so many different types of businesses. And like, honestly, it's because I have so many different interests, and I'm just like really a curious person, but I do that on purpose so that whatever it is, whatever your bright idea out there is like, by listening to this show that it's possible, because there's so many different types of businesses that come onto this show.
Yeah. And I mean, as a viewer and as a listener, because I've been listening since day one, I can definitely attest to that. There's so many times I've texted you and I'm like, oh my God, this person does this? Like what? I think just the vast like array of guests that you have on is really cool. And I think it just, like you said, it speaks to the fact that this, at least here in these United States, there's so many different businesses that make up what it is here. So why not give them that platform to share what they have to talk about? And I think the Bright Idea is the best place to do it, in my humble biased opinion. But I mean, as we wrap up the show, do you have anything else you want your viewers to know, or to know about you, as we go into season 3? Like this was your episode. This is a thing you hit me up about 2 days ago.
Literally 2 days
Come
ago.
on, and to interview you. Do you have anything else you want them to know about you?
I think what I want people to know about me is that I'm really here to just spread knowledge. Like I'm here to serve the community, and I get joy out of this by helping other people. Like this is not a show that I do so that I can like hear myself talk. This is a show that I do so that we can just grow as people. And I know that right now is a really crazy time with, I mean, this episode is going to come out after the election, but even after the election, I think this world is a really crazy time. And I know that one of the biggest things right now is inflation, and things are hard. It's hard to afford anything right now. And so for the businesses and the guests that I have on that are small businesses, like I have them on the show to tell their story, but I also have them on the show so that you can support them, because we need to support each other. So that's probably how I would close out today.
I love it. And this is tradition that at the end of every show, you have rapid fire.
Period.
So I have rapid fire for you. It's interesting playing host. So we have rapid fire for Amber. So here it is. You know the rules, Amber. I'm not about to break it down for you. You know what time it is. So rapid fire begins now. Winter or summer?
Summer.
Permanis or Uncle Sam's?
Uncle Sam's. I'm sorry, Pittsburgh.
So, well, okay, but Uncle Sam's is also a Pittsburgh sandwich shop. For those of you that have never been to Uncle Sam's or Permanis or have never been to Pittsburgh, you got to stop by. It's a staple. Please do that. Support local business. Anyway, moving on. Watercolors or acrylics?
Watercolors, they're more forgiving.
Now that is the God honest truth. Okay, you've done both of these. Skiing or jet skiing?
Skiing.
Okay, in front of the camera or behind the camera? You've had experience in both.
In front of the camera. Behind the camera is more technical, and that's a lot of work.
Okay, last question. Cats or dogs?
Oh, animals. Sorry, Baze.
A bipartisan woman.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. This was awesome, AK. This is great. It's so interesting to be in this position on this side of it, but I think this was really cool, and you did a great job, and you're doing a great job, so you should be proud, and we're off to season 3. Let's get it going.
Thank you, my sissy.
Don't mention it.
I want to know. No, this was great. It was. I was really nervous about this because I was like, "How am I going to sit here and ramble about myself?" But no, I think that you did an amazing job facilitating the questions. You know me. You know my life. And so if you're watching this right now, or if you're listening to this on your phone, let us know what you thought. Like, did you like the podcast episode of Kayla and I together? Would you like to see more of us? Maybe we'll even drop like a little clip from our old like roommate agreement episodes that we did. Because we're besties and we're sisters.
We got to drop in an old episode. It was really funny. And I think what we like to do is, like Amber said, we like to be light. We like to be fun. There's so many serious things that happen in this life. And we like to, at least when it comes to us, we like to be free and light. Unfortunately, Mano couldn't be on the show because he's in California. And if we called
it's
him,
currently, what time is it there?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Yeah. And Emmanuel, our brother sleeps until 2. So,
so he would not, this would have to be a nighttime call. And I feel like we are not going to cater to Emmanuel today.
Yeah. So exactly. So here's what you get. You get us. So let us know in the comments. Please comment. I love comments. If you want to hit me up on Instagram, if you want to email me, I'll put all of that in the show notes. I even like snail mail. I'm not giving out my address, but
sorry, y'all,
but yeah, if you're serious and you really love the show, like, let us know. Again, this podcast is available on all platforms, on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Amazon, you name it. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it.
Follow A Bright Idea. And if you guys have any, people that that are entrepreneurs and that you're like, oh my God, this would be really cool, really interesting stories and fun people, like, reach out to Amber. Because like she just said, she's trying to tell people stories, spread the news, spread the wealth here. So do that. Follow A Bright Idea. It's such a great podcast. So please do that. And we love that.
We love that. And last but not least, we're going to do a shameless plug that if you're on YouTube, you can also watch Players Club, Command Center, the Coaches Show, the pregame show, and the postgame show on the Commanders. We need to help get the views the views are great. Y'all are doing your thing.
No, I appreciate that, AK. That's crazy. I wasn't expecting a shameless plug, but yes, I do. I work for the Commanders. I'm on the studio broadcast team. I'm a producer and video editor. We produce a lot of shows. We produce 10 different shows and podcasts for the Commanders football team. Commanders are doing pretty well right now, and we're rooting for them for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're interested in tuning into Commanders content, but also content that I and my team produce, go to Commanders YouTube. You can also watch them on our former TV station, WSA 9.
Yeah.
We produce a lot of shows for them as well. So go do that.
Exactly. And I also want to mention that even you can watch on WSA 9, but if you are not in the area, you don't have to live in DC. You may not be able to get the game depending on where you live, but you can still view the content on YouTube, and that's why YouTube is such a great platform. So go do that. Like, the content is great. If you have a Commander player on your fantasy football team,
Tap in.
You better tap in
Tap
to watch
in.
our guy Brian Colbert Jr. It's Junior, right?
Yes, Brian Colbert Jr. is our host on our Commanders, almost all of our Commander shows. So follow the Commanders on YouTube and all the things. Follow A Bright Idea, because why not? That's why we're all here today. We're going to kick the season 3 off right. I think this was the best way to do it. So, AK, keep doing it. I'm proud of you, and let's get it going.
All right. Bye, everyone. Until next time, I'm Amber Key.
And I'm Kayla Key. This is Disney Channel.
And you're watching Disney Channel.
Oh,